Welcome to the Lazy CEO Podcast, where Jim Schleckser, author of Great CEOs Are Lazy and founder of the CEO Project, features compelling experts and topics for CEOs of mid to large-size companies. Now, let's get started with the show.
Welcome, everybody, to another Lazy CEO podcast. My name is Jim Schleckser. I am your host, and I am the founder of the CEO Project. Well, today we've got, I'm going to say a little more of an introspective guest in terms of the sense that we're going to look inside today. And my guest, Julian Harris, is the founder of Julian Harris Services. He was a commercial lawyer or barrister because he's from England, and worked with some phenomenal brands, Manchester United and Twinings. Twinings is in Andover. Funny enough, I lived in Andover in the US, so I made a pilgrimage to Twinings one day on my way to Somerset. But since he worked with Manchester United, we're going to talk about soccer for 45 minutes. I hope you all don't mind. No, we're going to talk about what he wants to. Because I think he has some really cool ideas and some things he's going to share that will be helpful for all of you. So, Julian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Great to be here. And I should say, yes, I work for Manchester United, but I'm an avid Liverpool fan. So there was a bit of controversy in those days. I told everyone I was bringing Manchester United down from the inside. That was my.
Got it.
That
So
was
you were the diversity candidate at Manchester United. We're not going to hold it again. Well, you've got a great pick on a team now. Liverpool's really dominant and has some amazing players. So yeah,
we are doing okay.
Yeah, you've had your moments before though, so it's
yes.
well earned that you're in the light now. Well, a bit of a joke, but Julian Harris Services. How did you come up with the name Julian?
A lack of imagination on my part.
That's funny. Well, so tell me a little bit about what Julian, we're going to get into sort of your conceptual frameworks in a bit here, but tell me a little bit about what you do. And I mean, you sort of no longer, or are you still in the commercial law space, or what do you do now most of the time?
Yeah, I'm fairly recently exited from being a practicing lawyer.
Yep.
It took me 20 years to get out.
Yeah. There is no cure, by the way. It's chronic. Yeah.
Yeah. Once a lawyer, always a lawyer, right?
Yeah.
But these days, I'm a business coach. So I work with startups and scale-ups, predominantly working with the CEO or the senior leadership teams. Industry agnostic. So clients range from AI businesses through to biotechnology businesses.
Okay, interesting. And given the diversity of background you've got sort of a credibility to do that. You know, everything from tea to footy teams, right? So
I like to think so.
Yeah. Well, hopefully your clients think the same.
Yes.
So I love, sort of the first topic that we thought we might talk about, which is this inside out conceptual model. In that, and I think this is really true, right? If you don't have the insides right, meaning between your ears, you're not going to be able to create that reality outside of yourself either. So help us unpack that a little bit. I hate that word. Help us understand that model, if you don't mind, and just what are you thinking there?
So I'm going to start with the outside in, which okay. I think is many people's kind of paradigm for the way they operate, whether or not they understand that's what's happening. I think many people think that the way they feel in any given moment is dictated by what's happening in the world around them.
Not true.
Right? So not true. But I think that's
they feel that. I hear
how
you.
most people operate.
Yeah, my example, by the way, is if somebody can be happy in a Russian gulag, then it has nothing to do with what's going on around you, right?
There you go. So you've given the perfect analogy for me. And this is something that I kind of began to understand just a few years ago. So excuse me, this is the way I think about it. At our very core, and if you want to think about it about it in spiritual terms, not religious, spiritual. I think about it sometimes as we all have a spark of divine light inside us.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the source of our love, our well-being, our creativity, our wisdom. And that's who we all are, all 8 billion of us on the planet. We all have that inside us. But at the same time, moment to moment, that that spark, that divine light, is obscured from us because of what's going on between the ears. And what's going on between the ears is a constant stream of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know where it comes from. We don't know where it goes to, but it's like a river of thought, moment to moment. And very often we get caught by that thinking. We go down the rabbit hole of our thinking, or we attach onto one particular thought. And maybe we believe that thought to be true. And it obscures us from who and what we truly are.
So how so there's a good mental model from Peter Senge, Fifth Discipline, and he talks about the ladder of inference, that we observe data. We all observe the same data, but then we filter it based on what are we paying attention to and not paying attention to it. And then we process it based on prior experience, knowledge, education, beliefs, whatever. And then we draw conclusions about it. And even though you and I saw exactly the same data, you might draw a very different set of conclusions about that data than I. So let's go all the way down to the bottom, because what you're talking about is perception of reality. So how can we help people think about accurately perceiving reality and not getting caught in that spin cycle that you described that always is going on in our brains?
Yeah, it's a great question. And for me, the first step is awareness. Awareness of how we operate and how everybody else on the planet is operating. Because often where we trip ourselves up is in relation to other people. Other people are behaving in a certain way, and because of what's going on in our minds, we're attributing certain behaviors to things that aren't true. We're all laboring under the same kind of misapprehensions all at the same time. So the first step is let's be aware of what's going on. Let's be aware that we're caught in our thinking in any particular moment, or we're believing a particular thought to be true. Is it actually true? Yeah. What's the truth in any given moment?
Yeah.
Because
now
you're
getting positively philosophic, though.
Yeah. And maybe we need to. Because and one of the thoughts that crops up most often is judgment. The judgments that we make about ourselves and the judgments we make about other people. But really the judgments we make about ourselves: I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I should be this, I should be that. And those are some of the most damaging thoughts that we can have. And those are the thoughts that really truly obscure, that divine light that I talked about earlier.
Interesting. Yeah, I have a friend who, when you do it to yourself, but other people do it to us, they say, you should do this. You ought to do this.
Yes.
And she calls it, stop shooting all over me. She calls it, it's right. Yes. It's a great little phrase. And you're like, you're right. Why do you impose that why do I impose it upon myself sometimes? Right. Yeah. But okay, so let's just go back to this not able to know reality. And a bunch of philosophers have gone through this, Socrates, Kant, and so forth. Like Descartes, how do you know reality? And I'm afraid that if we don't connect to the physical, which was really what Socrates said, what do you connect to, right? We are just, I think, therefore I know, and or I think before I am. I mean, therefore I am, and I'm just a ephemeral thinking being. But reality is not important. I mean, where do you go with this? Like, how do I get to grounded truth when you play this? How you never know that you know thing?
Yeah, I think in some senses we do actually know,
Okay.
because there is a small voice inside us all the time that is the voice of our particular truth.
Mm-hmm.
And most often we choose to ignore it, or we just don't hear it.
Yep.
And that's so when we can quiet our minds, quiet that mental chatter, that's the point at which we're more likely to hear the voice. And that's when we can access the creativity that's inside us, the wisdom inside us. To use a really kind of banal example, and I think this has probably happened to all of us at one point in our lives. We're wrestling with an idea, a problem, whatever it might be. We go for a walk in nature, on the beach, in the forests, in the woods. We have a shower, for example, right? The mind quietens, and that's when the insight arises. That's when we hear the voice.
Interesting. Yeah, big fan of showers, actually, as it turns out. I actually, funny enough, wrote about them in my first book.
Is that right?
Yeah, I said, if you got a hard problem, just get it all the data before you go to bed, go to sleep.
Yeah.
And then in the morning you wake up, you take your shower, and ideas are just going to roll out of your head, because your subconscious, while you're sleeping, will actually chew on all of that information and give you, the answer shows up many times in the shower, to your point. Besides showers, do you have other tools and techniques we might use to sort of quiet the other voices and amplify the true voice, if you will, or amplify the true voice? What other methodologies might you recommend?
Practice.
That's how you get to Carnegie Hall.
But actually, if you think about it, yes, we get caught up in our thinking all the time, but we actually come out of our thinking at different times in the day. And the more you realize that's the way you operate, the more likely you are to catch yourself, right? Where have I been for the last 10 minutes? I've been lost in my thinking. I like to think about stress, anxiety in this way as well. It's maybe a kind of slightly counterintuitive way of thinking about it. It's a horrible feeling to have stress. It manifests in different ways, but none of it is pleasant. But it's also like an alarm clock. Why am I feeling like this? It's because I've been lost in my thinking. And anybody who's ever been stressed or feeling overwhelmed, overwhelm is a great example again. Overwhelm is just not enough mental capacity.
I've said that about people before, yes. No. But no, I hear you.
You are twisting. You are twisting my words beautifully here.
just a little bit. No, I hear you. I mean, it means I've reached capacity, right? There's so much going on that I can no longer process all the things going on around me, and therefore I feel overwhelmed. Yeah, I totally get that. I think we've all had that feeling at one point or another.
That's right. And part of it is just following our thoughts round and round and round and round.
Yep.
And that produces a feeling. Okay. That feeling, it doesn't feel nice, but actually maybe we think about it, oh, that's a good feeling. It's reminding me to step back, to wake up, to come back to being more present. And when you can do that, I'm sure we've all done this, when you can do that, become more present, everything feels lighter.
Interesting. Yeah, you made me think about long drives. There'll be moments along long drives as I go, whoa.
Yeah, where have I been?
It's a little scary, you're like, where am I and what am I doing? In the last 10 minutes, I've been somewhere else, not driving probably. But let's translate this to your work with CEOs. So I love the conceptual model here. When you're working with a CEO of a startup or whatever stage, A, do you see this happening? And then how do you help them if you see it happening?
Yeah. So not always. It's, the way I work with each client is very different depending on the client and what the client brings. But I can think of one current example. He and I were talking about a superpower formula, a superpower equation for him in particular.
Everybody's got a superpower. Yes.
They have. And for him, so he's the CEO of a startup. He has investors, fairly new investors, with whom there's quite a difficult relationship. And he's feeling on the back foot, feeling a bit like victimized. And he's also has this narrative in his head that being robust is not being humble. Being robust, somehow forgive me, I'm a bit of if I'm firm and robust.
Yep.
And so the victim mentality is, well, it's them. It's all about them. It's the stuff happening on the outside is affecting me. So we talked about outside in versus inside out. And that awareness really, really helped him. So then I said, well, when you are robust, without being big, when you are robust and when you are focused on being inside out, that's when you're at your best. That's when you're in control. When you're negotiating with your investors, when you're having board meetings with key investors. And it's been really transformational for him. He's starting to lose the judgments about himself. He's starting to lose that victim mentality, and he's starting to be more in control rather than feeling like the victim in these challenging conversations.
Interesting. I've always loved the word firm in those conversations, right? I'm just firm, right? You could press on it and it's not going to go anywhere. And it doesn't mean I'm a horrible human being. It just means I'm quite clear about where I want to go and what I want to do.
Yeah. So you can be kind and firm at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. Interesting. It is, so how often do people, when you engage in you can create your own reality here by how you think, how you perceive, and then you can control your external environment through your thoughts. How often do people actually latch on and say, you know what, you're right, I'm not bobbing on the ocean of externalities, as like a cork. I'm actually in control of this. I mean, I would think in this realm of CEOs, more people would agree with that view, or perhaps not. Maybe I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, I just want to clarify one thing. I'm not sure you can ever control the outside environment, but what you can do is ensure that what's happening outside doesn't control the way you're feeling.
Okay, pardon me. Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
yeah. And that's something I should have mentioned earlier, because thinking and feeling are two sides of the same coin. Whatever we're thinking, we're feeling.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, the way human beings operate, however we're feeling, then we take action or don't take action accordingly.
Interesting.
And now I've forgotten the original question, Jim.
No, that's okay. It almost relates to the law of attraction, right? What I think about, what is my dominant thought, I can attract into it's a bit spiritual as well, that I can attract into my life. And I actually talk about this with people, right? If you're clear about where you want to go, you're firm on that, you'll find a way to get there over time, no matter what the externalities are. So I don't know if that resonates for you.
Yes, it does. Again, I always have a problem with the word attraction in that, because I'm not sure you attract, but what you do is your eyes are open.
Yeah.
So you can see the opportunities, for example, where before you didn't. I think that's how I reframe it.
No, I didn't finish the thought, but I completely agree. If I'm clear about where I want to go, every time there's a fork in the road, I know which one I want to take, because I know where I'm going. There's a great story, it's in the book, but about Alice in Wonderland, right? So Lewis Carroll's book. And Alice comes up to the Cheshire Cat, and there's a fork in the road. This is where the Cheshire Cat appears in the tree. And Alice says, Cheshire Cat, which road should I take? And the cat says, well, it depends. Where are you trying to go? And she goes, well, I really don't know. He goes, well, then it doesn't matter which road you take, does it?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's that, right? You know,
it is
it's
that.
clear, then you know which road to take.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that. I love that story because more often than not, either road is okay.
Could be.
It's just, you know, different events. It produces, you know, different events, different outcomes, but generally you just follow the path you're on again.
Interesting. But then I'll be in Scotland afore ye. So, you know.
Yeah. Rather you than me at this time of year. It's a bit cold for me.
It is a little old song.
Yes.
So let's go to the next sort of line, which is this control of environment. You talked about controlling yourself and your environment to gain effectiveness.
Mm.
And I actually I think there's a lot here, but help me with how you think about this.
Yeah. So I think about it in terms of performance. And I love to look at performance through the lens of elite sports performance. So full disclosure, I was never an elite sports performer.
What?
But I know. Who'd have thought it?
Yeah.
But I do take a lot from that world because I think there's so much that we can learn.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly in individual and team sports, the environment around the athlete is so important. And if, you know, especially in team sports, if there's an environment that is conducive to each and every, to the performance of each and every member of the team, then they're going to perform better. And there are stories, you know, throughout the world of sports, no matter what sport it is, where there have been changing room environments that have been toxic, have been, you know, and players don't perform. So the parallels are the same in business. So I work for myself, by myself. But in order for me to perform at my best, I still have to have an environment around me that is conducive to me performing well. So I think about it in energy terms. Who do I have around me, and what do I have around me that energizes me? And what do I do on a day-to-day basis? What are the tasks that I do that energize me? Conversely, who's in my life that depletes my energy? Who are the energy vampires? What are the tasks that I have to do day to day that deplete my energy? Right. And I think everybody can do an energy audit. It's a really straightforward exercise. But I think it's a great exercise if we're thinking about, you know, the marginal gains, again, using a kind of sporting analogy or a continuous improvement analogy from the world of manufacturing. How can I get better 1% day in, day out? And this is a great tool to be able to use.
Interesting. And I actually concur with that. I two lines there. One is you are the product of the 10 people you spend most of your time with. And so let's hope they're all positive, optimistic, you know, people trying to make a difference in the world and not negative, sucking you down.
Yeah.
And then this idea of energy vampires, there are people and tasks that just suck it out of you. And when the entrepreneurs in particular, this is stolen from Dan Sullivan, but the idea is, you know, you need to protect your energy. It's really the only thing we have, because once we lose our energy for the job, we're done, you know? So what do you do when you identify, what do you do with tasks or people that do deplete you? I mean, what do you do with that?
Yeah. Before I answer that question, and I will, Dan Sullivan's fantastic. And one of the things that Dan, he and I aren't on first name terms, but I'm using his first name. One of the things he recommends for entrepreneurs is I can't remember what he calls it, a rest day.
Yeah.
A day every once a week, have a day where you're not working. It could be a weekend. Many entrepreneurs do work weekends too, so it could be a weekend. But where you are doing something completely different other than work. It could be family time, sports, whatever it might be. And I think it's so important. There is unfortunately still in the startup world, especially a hustle culture where you think, you have to be working morning, noon, and night, 24/7, every day of the week. The way I think about it is, for me, certainly, and for my clients, I recommend nourishment. And I'm not talking about necessarily what I eat, but for the soul, for the mind. That's a way of energizing.
Yeah.
It's doing something like that. So I have a day in a few weeks' time, Friday the 1st of March, the movie Dune Part 2 comes out.
Nah. Are you going to be one of those people in the queue at midnight for the first seat?
I am not going to be in the queue at midnight. I'm hoping tickets will be easily available a few days before, but I literally, that's a day off for me.
Okay. Yep.
I'm going to be sitting there whilst the kids are at school, hopefully in the middle of the day, watching that movie.
Fun.
Knowing that I'm going to be absolutely energized creatively because of it.
Oh, it's a spectacular film. The first one was. The books were obviously too.
Yeah. But it could be anything. It could,
whatever works for you, right? It could be
right.
church. It could be a walk in the woods. It could be, for me, it's soccer.
Yes.
I go play footy.
Yeah.
And I come back, shockingly, after running for an hour and a half, I'm energized, which is weird, but it works.
It does work. It does work. So to come back to your question, what do you do about the tasks and the people that deplete your energy? So thinking about the people, sometimes in an organization, they're the right people, but in the wrong job, in the wrong seat.
Yeah.
Okay, so they have the values that that align with your organizational values. You want to keep them around. Can you possibly reallocate them?
Sure.
So that, I think the real issue comes when you've got the wrong people that are toxic in an environment. And that's a real challenge. And sometimes there are people in an organization who are, quotes, high performing, but are toxic.
Yep.
And I would argue that toxicity does not equate to high performance.
Interesting. I wrote an article about this, but it's copied off of Netflix. They have a concept around what they call brilliant jerks.
You mean inspired by Netflix? I don't want you getting a lawsuit now, Jim.
Well, they're the progenitor of the idea, so I don't know. Yeah, okay, inspired by, fine.
There you go.
Thank you for your legal advice. Anyway, but their concept is, we won't tolerate it. The brilliance isn't worth the toxicity for the team performance, and so if you are one, you're not going to be working here for very long. Right?
Yeah, that's right. And I think you have to ultimately exit these people in the right way. For them, the people that are outgoing, and also for the team that remains.
Right.
Just to reinforce the cultural message. These are the values that we stand for in this organization. And if you don't align with those values, then this isn't the place for you.
Right. Good. Is there anything else around the environment that we should be thinking about as leaders? We talked about the people around us. Is there anything physically around us that we should be thinking about that might be helpful?
I don't necessarily think about it in terms of kind of physical environment, although having said that, I can think of some offices I worked in as a lawyer which were absolutely not conducive to work.
That third sub basement with no windows. Yeah, I could be inspired
not quite
down
that
there.
bad, but bad enough. I think about it in terms of that old, phrase, psychological safety, which is easy to say, but difficult to create.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is, again, for me, it's a kind of should be a key value in every organization, but to create an environment where every voice can be heard, as long as the voice is respectful, there's an openness to engage in dialogue. A lot of the time, organizations, I think it's a place where organizations aspire to be, but it's very difficult to get to that place, and often there are kind of values up on a wall, right? But those values are just words on a wall or words on a piece of paper, and not embodied in the organization. And I think if you can get to a place organizationally where you have behaviors which flow down from those values, which form part of the incentive structure, so employees are rewarded for behaving in a way that are congruent with the values, that's half the battle towards creating a psychological safety organization.
Yeah. I yes, and I think consistent behavior by leadership in that area, because we can suppress an organization faster than anything through blow up in a meeting or dress somebody down for not doing something correctly. That's a great way to make everybody feel unsafe, right?
Yeah.
And, so we could do that. So I think yes values and demonstrated values and support of them, but also leadership behaviors that are consistent with it as
100%. It has to be modeled from the top.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, Julian, this was a fabulous conversation, really interesting and thoughtful. And you've obviously spent a lot of time sort of chewing on this yourself to come up with these thoughts. If somebody wanted, now your practice is primarily UK based?
No. My client base is divided pretty equally at the moment between US and UK.
Okay. Well, good. Well, if somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so you can have a look at my writing on LinkedIn, which is Julian K. Harris. But there are no barriers. There are no barriers to a conversation. I do mean that honestly. So if you are interested in talking to me, send me an email. The email address is julian@juliankharris.co.uk. Hopefully you can put that in the show notes, Jim.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah. Well, I won't, but Sharon will. So
thanks, Sharon.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for joining us. And you can head off to your supper soon, I think. Yeah.
Not just yet. I'm
quite yet. Okay.
Taking my son to soccer to footy later, so that's
lovely.
Next on the agenda.
Awesome. Well, thanks for your time. I really appreciate it.
And I love the conversation. Thank you.
Cheers. This podcast is brought to you by the CEO Project. At the CEO Project, we work with CEOs to help them grow their business. And our members represent billions of dollars of revenue and profit. And frankly, amongst all of us, we've probably made every mistake in the book, including some you haven't made yet. So if you want to learn from the experience of a bunch of really seasoned CEOs, we're a great place to hang out. In this podcast, what you're going to hear are some of those ideas, concepts, and things that are just going to help you on your journey. If you want to find out more, reach out to us at theceoproject.com, or you can contact me personally at jim@theceoproject.com. Happy listening.
Thanks for listening to the Lazy CEO podcast. We'll see you next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes, and check out our website, www.theceoproject.com.